let's go straight into it with what might seem obvious to some or really strange to others. That my number one tip, or tip number one, I should say, is to make sure that wherever your end of season finishes, that you have an off season. And that will look different to everyone. What I mean by an off season is where, if I'll use an Ironman example. Okay, a lot of Ironman Wales is a good example, but there's a few around the same time in September, mid-September. If I was coaching an Ironman athlete with a September major race, what I'd probably want the next 8 to 12 weeks to look like would be 2 to 4 weeks of almost very little, no structure. Really doesn't matter what you do. Take all the intensity out. If you want to train. If you don't. If you want to go for a walk with the family and the kids and the dog, do that and see that as your exercise. But a real period where you just, almost disengage from the sport and the activities that you do. Not activity in general, but just the specific race activities. And then gradually coming out of that, maybe you go back to some fun training. It could be the things that you've missed for a period of time. So the badminton with the next door neighbor, the five-a-side game with the mates, or anything that it might be there, within reason, that you don't go and do things you're not accustomed to and then set you back preparation time for the following season. But just unstructured fun training that you think just deloads the brain, declutters the body, and just everything is just easy and relaxed and fun. And then after that, we go, and again, it depends, could be weeks to a couple of months, depending on you and your plans. It then might be that it's very much a gradual introduction of the things that are associated with your specific sport, but again, with very little structure, and then building out to there. So I often get, how long should my off season be? It depends. Could be a couple of weeks, could be a couple of months, depending on what your bigger plans are. It may be that you don't have a major race or a major goal until maybe summer 24. So that might give you up to Christmas as a very down, flexible, relaxed time. You might be someone who can train for a marathon in 12 weeks when someone else needs 24 weeks. So it would all influence the period of where you stop and where you start. But however an off season might look to you, I think it's fundamentally important that happens physically and mentally, because what would tend to happen in my experience is those who just continue through will be okay for a couple of seasons, and then the wheels will fall off physically, mentally, or both. So that sort of covers what we've just said there, that, most off seasons will be the same but different, if that makes sense. They'll all be factoring the same considerations. They'll be trying to do the same things, the same reasoning, but they'll probably look and smell different to everyone individually, whether that's people of the same age, same background, same sports, same events they're training for. So I wouldn't, very much as I would advocate, don't pick up someone else's generic plan and think you can follow it. Likewise with this, one person's off season is different to someone else's. So you have to shape that and identify it yourself. Now, at any point of that off season or into the reintroduction to your season, at some point in that winter, I think the road ahead can only be determined by understanding where that destination is and then retrofitting back to see where it is. Now, most people will do one thing. They look forward. What do I want to do next year? What races do I want to enter? When are they? Blah, blah, blah. I've already entered those races. And that'll be the big goal. That'll be the set goal. Some people will then work backwards and go, okay, I want a 20-week plan. Where do I need to be 20 weeks before? And build it up from there. But lots of people don't. They just try to crack on from the point they're at now, consistently. So I'll try to do a 20-week plan now, and I'll be almost peak fitness, but I'm still 10 to 20 weeks out of my races. Or I'll just do it again, or try and maintain that. And that's where problems happen, because the goals and the planning have been slightly misplaced, misdirected. But it's the first thing that I really wanted to draw attention to, the review part of it. Most people don't look back on what they've done to see if that will influence, in a positive and a negative way, what's to come. So generally, I find most people who even follow training plans tend not to keep a training diary. They might have a Strava CCV file or something or other going on as far as info, but documenting electronically or on paper, just how did I feel on those, at this point in my season? Was I fatigued? Was I missing more sessions in my training? Was my sleep disturbed? Was I eating all right? Was I gaining weight, losing weight? Did I feel great? Did I feel awful? And trying then to almost work out, well, why? What was going on in the couple of weeks before that? Well, actually, it's that bit where work for a month or two is crazy. I've got a patient that I'm working with now as who's a chef in a big, large farm. And part of their role this time of year is pumpkins. So there's a big pumpkin patch. People come and pick your own, all of those things. In the week now coming up to Halloween, she's probably going to be working 100 hours. So if that was to fall at some point in the season where she's training for something, and then we realize, well, actually, I try to keep pushing in that 100-hour week. So actually what I need to, and then I got injured, or then my performances really fell off the other side of that. Maybe we need to plot then, okay, well, that's going to pop up this year again. So we need to work out what we can do in the weeks before and the week of and the week after that allays some of those things that reared their head last year. Likewise, often it could be when looking at these things, well, what went well? Something might have gone really well, and it's something we want to expand on, double down on. So you've got to look back sometimes to look forward. And I don't think enough people do it. And it's a brainstorm normally, get a piece of paper, put down like good, bad. Well, yeah, this feels good. This feels good. And if you've got a coach, maybe it's a joint effort, a collaborative thing you do. If you're part of a club and you don't tend to do these things, maybe you all have an evening together, you go out for a meal and you sit down and you chew the fat on some of these things and sort of trying to do sweat where they lie. So let's imagine now that that's done. You've reviewed, you've worked out what went well, you've worked out what may have been better, or what went well, what could have been better, how that aligns with what is the same or different in your plan and goals for the following year. What I would do then is take all the good info, keep the bad info as well, but then look what those goals look like. So what is my potential race calendar for 2024? And the first thing I would do is literally write it down like you do in everything. Put everything down that you plan to do. Then look at the answers to the review process. Then compare them to this and work out, well, okay, that's probably not feasible. That's not, and this has to be a really cold-hearted, calculated exercise. It may be something that you do multiple times. Okay, I think that's going to be my race plan. Let's sleep on it for a couple of nights, go back, have another look. Let's ask someone to come and have a look for me. Because on a second reflection with a brand new day, you might look at it and just go, no, actually, that's still too much. Because last year I raced 4 times in July, and that seemed to affect August and September. Or I picked up my knee injury after those 4 races in 6 weeks. Now I look at my calendar, well, it's still 4 weeks and it's 4 races in 6 weeks, even though my overall race is different. It may be that you go, well, those 4 races over that period were all major races. I tried to perform at my maximum in all of them. So I'm still going to keep those 4 in, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them all C races, but 1 an A race. So no formal goal to it. It's just going to be a formalized training sort of session. So we're really trying to pick apart our big picture type thinking, the things that the optimistic goals, and turning them into realistic goals. Because normally what our biggest mistake is that fear of missing out is never been a more, of all the modern sort of twists that social media and modern living has brought to my experiences from, say, the early 2000s, it's fear of missing out that's the thing that's magnified the most. Most of us hate seeing things happening on a race calendar and not being part of them. And what I think happens for most people's problems in their winter is that race goal, that plan, that season ahead is often structured from what I call this perfect storm. So they look at all the races they've done and they want to do again. And then they look at all the races that look really cool and someone else did it and I like their medal, or the venue looks good, or I just want to do that race. Then I see other people entering them, and actually, there's a deal on this company does a series of 4 races, and if I do all 4, it gives me a 20% discount. And we just start loading this up, and it becomes unrealistic. I've had lots of experience in the last few years of dealing with athletes where the perfect storm for like a novice or new endurance athlete is something along the lines of first season, first year comes along and they do 5 or 6 races and they bloody love them. Brilliant, loved it, great. Year 2 comes, they're going to do all the same 6 races, but they're going to have another 5 or 6 races thrown in. And there's 1 or 2 that were unplanned because their mate was doing it or someone dropped out and they gave them the entry or whatever it was. So now they've gone from 6 to 12 races in 2 seasons. Season 3 comes along when there's no thought still of not doing races because they want to get better at everything they've done, or they just want to, we went out for a beer after that one, so we'll do that one again. But actually now there's more races, and all that happens is we're just doing more and more and more. And when we chat about why they got injured or why their goals weren't met from a performance point of view, it's because they're saying, well, I'm tired. Or I always feel like I'm pushing really hard. I'm always recovering from races. I'm never really building fitness after June. But now you want to add more in, when the actual answer is to take some stuff out and step back and be comfortable at doing less. And then, of course, when the classic one of, okay, fine, there's 15 races. I'm not saying 15 is too much. I'm not saying it's too little. But which 5 of those? We'll keep the thing the same, but tell me 5 of those that's your major races. Which ones do you want to perform in? Oh, well, all of them. That's the answer, all of them. I want to PB London Marathon. I want to then do an Ironman PB, and I want to do parkrun twice a month and PB that. And you're like, guys, it's just not realistic because you've fallen into this perfect storm of seeing it, wanting it. Everybody else is doing it. I don't want to miss out. I don't want to not do things I did before. And of course, peer pressure. Oh, I'm doing this race on the weekend. Why don't you come along? Come on, we'll all go and we'll all go for a coffee and a cake afterwards type of story. So it's alive and it's real and it's true. And I see so many people in clinic with problems because of it. And I pick up so many people on the coaching squad because they've got things wrong. And when we put things right, and a lot of them will go, oh, I had the best training plan ever, or, I can't believe how it changed what I did. Most of the time, it's because we've pulled things back and we put things instead that will get us to our major goals. Most people, when I chat to them who have multiple races planned, they don't have any thought process around which ones are most serious or not. Even to the point of, I'll say, right, if we want to race 10 times, what's the minimum you're happy to race? Well, what do you mean, Mike? Well, like, let's say we have to pull races out. We don't want to. We want to plan it well enough that unless we're injured, we don't want to not do races on the plan. But if I was to say, of those 8 races, we're only going to do 4, which ones could you cut loose? Oh, I don't know. Well, maybe that one then. Okay. If you're happy to cut that loose now, do we even need to enter it? Because we could have a big training weekend instead. We could do something different. The things we're saying that you don't think you did enough big runs or enough volume, you didn't go in the mountains enough for that ultra race training. Why don't we take away a couple of them little races and go and do something else instead? Or take the performance aspect out and make it more of a training weekend. So you're going to do the race, but we're going to do a run after the race as well and make it a bigger weekend. So just a rethink around some of that planning or almost deeper. Most people would say, yeah, I planned my season. I reflect on my last season. I just look what races I did and I add more on. We're just trying to scratch the surface a bit deeper and be a little bit more clinical in the way we think about it. So my genuine mantra to most athletes at this point is, okay, you've got all your races that you want to do. I want you to write the end goals in pen. So that end goal might be Ironman PB, might be qualification for this. It might just be to do 5 marathons this year. Whatever it is, everybody will have different goals. They go in pen because they're fixed. They're set in stone. That's what we're trying to do. But all the other things are in pencil. All the B and C category races, all the training plans, all the stuff that we're thinking in and around it, they might just be in pencil and we'll deal with them if and when we need to change and chop and edit them. But one of the big goals might be to do winter strength training. It might be to recover more. It might be to learn to read a map more in the hills, that type of thing. It doesn't have to be a performance-based goal. It could be a component part to get us to better foundation. So write your end goals in pen, write everything else in pencil, because we should be happy for those things to change during this process of planning. And I think if you were to do nothing more around the review, plan, and goal setting aspect, it's learning your ABCs. So that is basically trying to categorize your race priorities. So your A race is the all in, I'm going for it. This is my major goal for the season. And everything else should be shaped around that. Now, you could have multiple A goals. It's the scope of tonight's beyond going down specifics with specific athletes about how many A goals, how far apart should they be, what should we do in between. You can obviously have more than one, but a lot of people will just have the one. But they're not only going, well, and this is the misunderstanding or lack of understanding I see, is when I then say to them, okay, which ones are B's and C's? Well, it's these. So what does that mean to you? Well, it means it's not as important. Okay, so what does that mean performance-wise and training-wise? Because to me, a C race, nothing changes in your training plan if I'm coaching you for a C race. We don't taper. We don't change anything about it. It just means we have a session in the week or the month that is a formal race, but we're doing it at lower intensity. We don't have any, we have goals, but maybe they're lower priorities. It might be training a new nutrition product. It might be to just practice some component part of something, but they absolutely are just doing normal training in a different environment. Most people don't see that. It's like, well, I still go a bit harder, but it's just not as important type of thing. So it's important, I think, to read up and understand what you see a B and a C race as, and then working out how many you have. Abraham Lincoln's fantastic quote of give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe is where my brain sits with and my philosophy sits with this ABC goals. B and C goals are about sharpening the axe. And the more of that time you can spend sharpening the axe, when you come to chop the tree down in your A races, you're probably going to be quicker and more effective at doing that. Too many people are trying to chop the tree down through their winter, through their spring, through their summer, constantly, instead of sharpening the axe and just taking their foot off the gas with some of these things. Tip 3, you'll probably work out we're nearly halfway through and he's only on tip 3. Some are short and sharp, some are more important. As much as I've said, there's not a priority list or hierarchy of importance. I think some need more explanation. Some are probably worth dwelling on a little bit longer than others. So we're at this phase, I guess, here now, where I mentioned in the off-season return to training type phase, where you're training, but it's probably at a lower volume, it might be as frequent. The intensity is probably a bit down, but almost, I think, the biggest thing you've dialed down is the seriousness and the specificity of what you're doing. So you might be doing some stuff, but if you followed me on social media, I'm a big fan of embracing the monotony, just being laboriously consistent in what you're doing. This isn't about not being consistent. It's just about variety. It's just about realizing that your training plan can be formal, but it can be very varied. And that could either be in a structure that is rigid, but with different things from what you'd normally do. It's the runner who throws a bit of swimming in. It's the triathlete who might decide that he's going to do a couple of spin classes instead of his hard bikes outside. What it may also be is this element of adaptability. So I'm in this phase now myself. Next year, I've got a number of ultra runs that I'm going to be training for. So from Christmas, I'm really going to pick up my running. So there's days now where I feel like I'll wake up in the morning and I'll go, I might do a run X tonight when I get home. And all day I think, yep, that's what I'm going to do. Now, in season, in training, that's rigid. I can't change that. That's what needs to be done to meet my goals. But right now, actually, it's less important. If I get home and it's pouring down and it's raining and I just think, I'll just go on the bike in the garage, or I'll go for a swim instead, or I'll do some strength work. That's what I mean about the adaptability. It might be that you're on a session and this can go up or down. I was supposed to do an hour easy. I'm just going to do 20 minutes hard because I'm sort of in a bit of a rush or I can't be bothered. Or vice versa. You dial it down a little bit. It might be for some that it's doing the things that you don't. You don't normally do. So give you a good example. In my pomp of triathlon training 15, 20 years ago, I was a proper lone wolf. I was a proper miserable sort of athlete in the way of I was quite antisocial. I liked to train on my own. I didn't like to rely on others. I didn't want to be relied on by others. So I would generally train on my own. So I would race for clubs and I'd be part of teams, but they wouldn't see me until race day. I just wanted to do my own thing. Now, in the off season, because I thought, well, they probably understand, but they know I'm being a little bit antisocial. In my off season, I would go to club sessions. I would meet them for the 90-minute coffee and cake ride, even though I'm thinking, oh my God, I could have done 3 hours by now if I was on my own. It was something different. I was involved, but not committed to what I was doing at the time. So it might be that it's things like that, or you do your own training to have a break. It might be a bike ride with the kids rather than a bike ride with your mates who you go out through the season with. So just options for you to vary and make it look different in different ways.